Good morning and welcome to the VSA Capital 5-Minute Morning Miner on Friday the 9th of December. I guess it's sort of it ought to be the big Christmas day, I think, today, because it would be next Friday, but all the trains on strike, so everyone's had to cancel that thanks to Mike Grinch. But Friday's, of course, Thursday's the new Friday in the city, I think, isn't it, Paul?
Well, yes, it sure is in the city anyway.
Yeah, I must admit, I went for lunch yesterday and it was actually far, far busier than I was expecting. And of course, it was a Christmas menu, so there was no choice, and the prices were twice as much as they normally would be, which is why we hate Christmas lunches. Anyway, don't get me going on that. Now, it's Friday. We said we would do a commodity every now and then on Fridays, and there's not much news out today. And so let's talk about vanadium, because a lot of people have been talking to me about vanadium this week. Ferroalloys have had a bit of a run from sort of 10p up to 15p. But let's just start with the commodity itself, Paul. I have a lot of strong views myself, but I'll try and keep as quiet as I can. Paul, tell us what your thoughts are on vanadium and the stocks within it. Let's get going.
Well, yes, let's talk about vanadium a little bit here. It is one of the primary minerals that we're looking forward to for the battery revolution here around the world. The particular properties of vanadium are such that it has the capacity to deliver significant amounts of energy within a battery. But the nice thing about it is the chemistry is such as a liquid form that it will charge and discharge, for instance, at the same time in a setup, the battery setup, which lithium ion can't do. It is not a flammable chemical as it charges or discharges, unlike lithium. So it has a very high safety rating in deployment. It is relatively common around the world, but rather difficult in order to bring up to a battery grade concentration and quality. So that's what it contributes to the major price as far as the electrolyte is concerned. But its primary use has been around for a very, very long period of time in the steel industry as a hardener, particularly in that rebar sector and steel I-beam framing for buildings and so forth. That's where its primary use is across the world, and frankly will stay that way for some significant period of decades yet at this point, until we can see it really grab hold in the battery sector.
Well, that was pretty good. So I'll just add a few things. Atomic number 23, as you say, it's actually an incredibly common metal, and most of it is used in steel. It's you can obviously mine it directly, but it's often a byproduct and things. Most of it at the moment is mined in China and Russia, but it's also you can produce it out of steel smelter slag. People are now starting fly ash. People are now starting, there's a big JV between Aramco and Shell and AMG to make it out of the catalysts of refineries. So it's actually probably, actually very easy to get vanadium. Currently trading at about $7.90. The range has been between about $3, and actually it did peak a few years back at $38, and everyone got very, very, very excited. I think, obviously, as you pointed out, the big hope is that it becomes a battery material product. And I think most people know we act for Infinity Energy Systems, and I'm a huge bull of it. I do believe that vanadium flow batteries are going to be a large part of the long duration energy storage, but it's chicken and egg, isn't it? Because, the largest cost in a vanadium flow battery is the vanadium itself. And the reality is that vanadium flow batteries, to really take off, they need a low vanadium price, not a high one. Well, the vanadium miners want a high one. Now, if you look around, basically, because it's a byproduct, fly ash and that sort of thing actually is pretty much free. You've got US vanadium in the States, which I've been to see in Hot Springs, that uses fly ash, so they're producing it for very little. The other big players, I suppose, you've got Bushveld, you've got Largo, you've got ferroalloys. Those are the sort of quoted ones that we know. Got any views on those, Paul?
Yes, we've in those which are working. What are the vanadium magnetite bearing deposits? And you're talking about Largo and Bushveld in particular there. Bushveld's deposit in South Africa, which is one of the primary places where it's first been commercially developed over many decades ago, and then Largo just in the recent decade and a half or so in Brazil. Those companies will continue to be commercially viable simply because their deposits are as rich as they are. There are up and coming players in the vanadium magnetite space, which will be attempting to usurp them. And then you have the shale producers, like you have ferroalloys, for instance, in the shale space. But it is the big hope of the climate lobby that we see a lot more sustained use of recycled materials like fly ash or like the steel slags, of which Neometals, for instance, the ASX listed firm, is in a JV on steel slags there in Scandinavia at the moment. So that's where the big hope is. But all of these will continue to have commercial application. It's just a question of whether or not they can make the processing cheap enough or inexpensive enough to significantly erode the initial capex advantage that lithium ion has for batteries.
Yeah, so I mean, Bushveld and Largo obviously are already in production. Ferroalloys is actually quite a long way from production, but it does have Sir Mick Davis in there as a major shareholder, which has got a lot of people excited. But I mean, again, some of these vanadium mining projects, TNG is one we used to act for a long time ago in Australia, isn't it, Paul? I mean,
that's right.
To get that mining project going was huge.
That's right. And don't forget our Shanghai Mining Club member, Voyager Metals, with their vanadium magnetite deposit there in Canada. So you've got the advantage in Canada, for instance, of being tier one political jurisdiction benefit. So we would hope to see more producers out of Australia and Canada in order to essentially level the playing field on risk, I think.
Actually, another client of VSA, Aris Strategic, TSX listed, it's mainly a fluorspar project, but it does actually have a vanadium exploration asset just outside Vancouver. Which one day may be quite interesting. I think one other point I'd make is when you actually use vanadium in a vanadium flow battery, it has to be very high quality. It's not as simple as just taking any old vanadium. The impurities can really mess vanadium flow batteries around. They have to be very high spec. And actually, just the other point, but one of the biggest traders in vanadium is Glencore. Glencore actually have pretty good supplies of vanadium coming from all around the world. So it is quite a complex industry. It's not quite as simple as maybe some people think. But if you want to know more about vanadium, come to VSA Capital. We know all about it, don't we, Paul?
Well, we know certainly a very awful lot, yes.
Look, the news is very scatty today. There's not a lot, so we'll skip over that. If anyone's going for Christmas lunch today, enjoy it. Don't get too drunk. Enjoy the weekend. Don't get too cold. And we'll be back again next week.
Back again next week.